Growing up in that small mining town, one of 6 children, is it true you really, at that point, thought that singing was something you did in the bathroom?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, I even thought that as I got older and got into university. And I really thought it was something you did for fun. And I would do it on weekends sometimes and work in and around town, but I never really thought of it as something I'd do for a living.
But when you stood up before the graduating class in your high school and you sang the Ave Maria, was that a turning point for audience reaction or for sensing?
Actually, no, because I'd always gotten a very good reaction any time I had sung. That time was, I suppose it was because we were graduating. It was a little more of an emotional moment than anything else. I don't think anyone was thinking about my singing. Of course, I don't know. I was so nervous.
How about the time between graduating from college with this physical education degree in '66 and Snowbird in '70? What was going on in the life of Anne Murray?
Well, I taught school the year after I graduated, but the summer I graduated, I did a television show in Halifax that was a summer replacement show that went across Canada. And so I got quite a bit of attention. And the year I taught, I was getting requests to drive to Halifax, so I would have to take weekends and drive, and I would have to take Friday afternoon off, so I would have to ask the principal if I could take Friday afternoon off, drive, and go to radio shows, television shows, and that kind of thing. And I did that pretty much all year long, and about halfway through the year, he had to know whether I was coming back. And I really didn't know, and I had an offer to do a television show, and this, that, and the other thing, so I thought, well, I was only 21, so I thought I might as well give it a shot. So I really started full-time show business in '68, and then in '70, Snowbird was there. So
does that amaze you?
Well, it amazes me because I thought that I would have to spend a lot more time paying dues, but my first single record was a hit.
I know.
And that, I think, is unusual.
What makes you special to you? What makes you know that you are unique and good?
Well, I think that the only thing that I ever really knew is that my voice was unique, that it was deeper and different than anything I had ever heard, and indeed it really still is. It's very identifiable on the radio, and that in itself is a great asset.
Oh, yeah.
When you're trying to get people to have a listen, and if they can pick out your voice right away, it's terrific.
But you know, I'm thinking about the placement as a human being when you're 21 years old and you in your own mind know there's a possibility, but then you've got these business people around you that decide they'll mold you their way.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, when I decided to give it a shot, I was just going to do it for a year. Well, of course, after a year I still didn't know anything, so as time went on. When Snowbird happened, it was a bit too much for me because I really didn't feel that I had enough of a base, and I don't think anyone ever expects their first record to become a hit. The dues paying for me came after Snowbird.
How?
Well, I figured that I was probably a one-hit wonder. I went 2.5 years before I had another hit record, and everyone forgot who I was, because you can't have just one hit.
Now, the next one was not Love Song, was it?
No, the next one was Danny's Song.
Right.
And in those 2.5 years, things were pretty tough.
What were you doing? You know, I'm drawing to mind a Janie Fricke down in Nashville who goes undiscovered for so long, then all of a sudden, but works hard. What was it like mentally and emotionally? It
was very, very difficult. After Snowbird happened, it was like a whirlwind. I mean, I was on a treadmill. I said yes to everything. I was handling everything myself. I was the road manager. I put a band together. I booked us into hotels. I did everything. And as a matter of fact, one of the places we played was the last time I played Boston.
Really?
In 1971 was the last time that I ever... Now, I've played around Boston. Worcester. I've played Cohasset, but I played Hyannis, but I've never played Boston proper since Paul's Mall in 1971. And that was the beginning of probably the worst 11 weeks of my life, because I think I started in New York at the bitter end, and I ended up at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and I played all these little clubs. So that was when I thought to myself, this can't be worthwhile.
Is it true that Anne Murray has a disdain for being on the road?
Well, yes, I've always been a homebody, but I don't mind it nearly so much now because I have a lot more time. My children are in school, And also, I have the luxury, because of what's gone on before, of being able to pick and choose where I go and when I go. And I only do about 70 dates a year. I don't do 200 or anything like that. So I have the luxury of that time and to enjoy myself and be with the children, and yet I still want to work, and so I'm enjoying it more now than I ever did.
Let's talk about your children, William and Dawn. You meet this man, is it Bill
Bill,
Langstroth?
yes.
You meet him because you're doing a show in Nashville, right?
Well, no, he was the one I auditioned for that first television show I did in Nova Scotia. He was the host of the show, and I had auditioned for it in my second year of university and didn't get on. And he kept calling me, and in my last year he called and said, "Would you come down and audition?" And I said, "No, I've already auditioned. My pride had been hurt. You know what I can do." He said, "Well, if I tell you that it's just a formality and that the musical director and myself are very keen to have you on the show, would you come down?" And I said, "Yes." And I went down and auditioned, and the musical director was Brian Ahern, who produced my first 10 albums. And Bill was the host of the show, and I later married him.
What was he the first to recognize your talent, and also something else in you?
Well, I don't know whether he was the first to recognize the talent, but he was the first who had any power or whatever to...
Persistence, too.
Yes, and to use it to put me on television and develop that talent.
What makes this such a good marriage?
Well, he's never been involved in my career, except in those early days. For about a year, he managed me because I didn't know what to do, and he was helping to book me in places and stuff. But since then, he's never been involved in my career, and I like it that way. Not really been involved in my career.
But he is involved in your home.
In my life.
In your life.
And as a matter of fact, without him, I could not have pursued the career with the children as I have. I had to have someone there. Because I'm old-fashioned enough to think that children need their parents, or at least one every now and then, and if he happens to go away, I stay at home, and vice versa.
Your children really do mean a lot to you. Did that kind of round out your life with the birth of William and then Dawn?
Well, it all happened at a time when I felt like I was beating my head against a wall. Now, I had had 4 hit records, but I had no momentum. In this business, you must have some momentum. You must have 2 or 3 hits, one after the other. I was lucky enough to have about 5 after You Needed Me. You Needed Me was a very strong song, so it carried me for a while, too. But you absolutely need that momentum. Before that time, I said, I don't know what's happening to me. I can't seem to get a career happening the way I want it to happen, or at least the way I envisioned it. So I just said, well, if I can't do that, what I'm going to do is something I've always wanted to do, and that's have a family. And of course, it was a lot more important to me because it was something that I had dreamed about. I had never dreamed about having a show business career, so this was something that I really wanted. And there just happened to be someone I loved very much there, and it all sort of fell into place. But we got married in '75, and I had the baby the next year. And then all of a sudden, my career fell into place too, because I kind of went, whew, now I've got that out of the way. Let's now see if we can do this career thing.
Put you on more solid footing, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But the words You Needed Me, now, were you then pregnant with your daughter when You Needed Me had already hit?
No. No, I had had William.
You had William?
Yes, but no, You Needed Me happened. I recorded it in '77. William would be a year old.
Do the words have special meaning for you?
Well, of course they do. They came at a time when I needed that song very badly. I hadn't had a hit record in 4 years. I wanted a career very badly, and I had this song, and I knew it was a hit. I knew if people got to hear it, that it would be a hit record.
But you've never had any trouble getting airplay?
No, but there was some time there that I did, and I needed a big song. I needed a career song, and that was it.
Wasn't that the #1 album as well that
Yes,
year?
it was the biggest album. Well, it wasn't the biggest album I've had. The Greatest Hits album is the biggest album I've had. But that song, I finally had a focus. As a matter of fact, that whole album was kind of a labor of love because my last one had been done before I was married, or just after. And with the baby, there was like a whole whole new thing for me in singing these songs.
Business of being on the road, is it true that last year you were on the road for 2.5 months and you say you'll never do that again?
Last fall, it kind of got out of hand. I was booked to do certain things. It looked great on paper, and then all of a sudden there was a CBS special thrown in, this, that, and the other thing, and I ended up being away 2 months out of 3. Well, that just can't happen again.
How did that affect your kids?
Well, I was just away too much. You lose touch with them.
Yeah.
And what my policy has been that the longest I'll be away will be 2 weeks. And then I'll come home for 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever, and then go out again. And that's been the policy, and it's worked. But I find that nothing ever works the way you want it to. I just think I've got a balance, and something upsets it. Whether it be a hit record, and people need you here, they need you there. And
you mean there's a downside to all of this momentum?
Also, just when you think you have it together, all these people are coming after you, and you have to say no, and I do say no.
How do the kids handle your success?
Well, I don't talk about the career around the house at all. Once I go through those doors, it's over.
But tell the story of William saying his prayers.
Well, William, now this was when he was about 4 years old, and I think he was really trying to get a reaction from me, but he was, God bless Mommy and Daddy and Nana and Gramps and so on, and God bless Anne Murray. Well, he did. I must say, he did get a laugh out of me. And I thought about it after a while, and of course, we're sort of two different people. And somebody came to the door the other day and asked for, or no, phoned me and asked for Anne Murray on the phone. It was an interview. And he said, "But Mummy, they asked for you by your wrong name." And I said, "Well, who did that?" "They asked for Anne Murray." And he said, "When you're here, you're Anne Langstroth."
Oh, isn't that great?
And I said, "Well, you're right there." But we just don't discuss the business at all at home. When I come home, Bill and I usually go over the week or the 2 weeks I've been away.
But not in front of the kids?
Not really. They're usually asleep.
Have you always been comfortable on stage, or did it take you time?
No, I've never been comfortable on stage. I am now. In the last few years, I've become comfortable because
what kept you from it?
I think it was the insecurity of people not knowing who you were, what you were, and trying to explain yourself to people.
You mean from in here?
Yes, but not only that, but musically. If you have 1 or 2 or 3 hit records, and you don't have a very high profile, which I never did in those days, I was very reticent, and I still don't have that high a profile, really. People know me from radio and records mostly. And so I was reticent and sort of a bit nervous as to whether people would know who I was, particularly in Las Vegas and places like that. It would take me a good half hour before I could sort of win them over. And that doesn't happen anymore. My track record speaks for itself. The show is full of hit records. I'm comfortable now because I know when I walk out, they know who I am, and I don't have to prove myself.
More confidence.
Yes,
Isn't
it's
that
confidence.
Strange?
Really,
Isn't
that's all it is. It's a matter of confidence. I've always known that I could sing well. I never really had to worry about that. And now I have good musicians around me, and I have musicians who are. I don't have the booze and the drugs and all of that, and I've been through that too,
yeah.
and that's all gone. And so I'm very, very comfortable.
A lady in control.
Yes.
You know, I wonder if you could use this analogy. If life were a deck of cards, and you took Anne Murray's deck and threw it in the air, would you have the cards land any differently in any area than they have for you?
Well, I would like not to have gone through those middle years from 1970 to 1976, when I was on the road constantly with a group of men. I was terribly lonely. I had nothing to go home to, really. I had my family, but when I say go home, I was living in Toronto. I would have very little time when I did go home.
What was wrong with those years? Did you fall apart?
I didn't really fall apart. I never ever did fall apart. I came close a couple of times, but I held it together. They say that those times are morale boosters and builders and character builders and all of that, and that may be true. I thought it was just garbage, and I didn't enjoy it one bit. It was miserable, awful time. But boy, it sure makes these days look real good to me.